Welcome back, Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good buddy Ty Frank, coming at you live. This is a podcast where we like talk about things that we are interested in, and our interests are very limited. And there's
and out of date.
We don't have anything to add to them. We don't have anything to, it doesn't matter because nobody's probably listening anyway. But if you are, please like and subscribe to this nonsense that we're about to bestow in front of you. What are we talking about today, Ty?
I guess you clicking your tongue means we're talking about Hereditary.
By the way, there was this little cutie pie in my 7th grade class. Her name was Charity Smith. And I had a little crush on her, but she used to do that.
Dude, you're 40. You should not be dating 7-year-olds.
No, dude, this was like when I was 35. It was like,
okay.
8 years ago.
That was years ago.
Okay, years ago. But her name was Charity Smith, and she used to do that. She used to go. We're talking about Hereditary, by the way. But she used to. When it was kind of like she would comment on something. So like if you said something that was insulting, she'd be like, or if it was just like her thing, or like she would just constantly like do that thing. And I'm like, fucking Payman made an entrance early on in Charity Smith.
This is why I think you're so terrified of like Ouija boards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You had that early brush with demonic possession.
Yeah, I think because I came across Payman at an early age. But I do think Payman's kind of out of the 8 kings of hell. I think he's probably on the lower end of the totem pole. Because he had a really kind of, I don't know, his cult was unremarkable, right?
Yeah, they didn't seem like powerhouses.
Yeah, there's like a few old people, and they went to one house, and I'm like, and her house was, it's like, motherfucker, you worshiping Payman? Why are you living in an apartment? Why do you have a nicer house?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like worshiping Payman gives you the huge payoff you're hoping for.
No, I want the Clintons, Trump. I want that. I want to know that demon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't want to know that demon. I do not want to invite. I don't want to invite any of that shit. So no, I don't want to know any demon. That was just a joke. That was a joke. Do we have garlic? Hereditary. I saw Hereditary for the first time. By the way,
just to follow up on what Wes is saying, dear demons, if any of you are willing to offer me vast wealth in exchange for my soul is absolutely for sale. Just show up anytime. I'm ready to go. I've already got a pen and some blood to sign with.
And demons, this is all on. I have nothing to do with this. All right. So you go to Ty's house. Stay away from me. I don't want. Get behind me, Satan.
My suspicion is that I will continue to have never seen a demon.
My suspicion is that you've already made that deal a long time ago.
Well, I didn't get enough.
Yeah.
Where's my private jet?
You don't have a private jet, G-man. You have like a couple of rungs above Payman. So if you're gonna sell your soul,
I'm not living in that lady's apartment.
No, you got to get up the kings, the 8 kings. So Hereditary.
Yeah. So let me tell the story of this. So Wes and I talk horror movies a lot. Talk, sci-fi genre movie, I would say. Any genre movie, action movies, sci-fi movies, horror movies, all that. And every now and then something shocking will happen. One, that I won't have seen a movie because I see every movie. So every now and then, like all of my friends are always trying to find a movie I've never seen. That's like Breck is constantly messing with me, trying to see if I've seen some weird, obscure shit he's seen. But the other shocking thing is when a movie was like huge, was talked about constantly, got great reviews, got great audience reactions, really changed the landscape of cinema a little bit, and somehow Wes missed it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking the other day, and he's like, hey, I've never seen that one A24 movie that was like their first big horror hit. Like, are you talking about Hereditary? You've never seen Hereditary?
Dude,
He had never seen Hereditary. How did that happen to you, man?
I have no fucking idea. I have no idea.
Were you in the hospital at the time? Were you in a concussion or something?
Well, there are moments where there's like gaps in my memory, and it's usually if I go to work. I don't have that much. I don't have many brain cells to start with. So if they're focused on a job, then the whole world disappears for me. It all goes blank. And so then I show up. It's like having amnesia. It's like, oh,
Right.
where am I? Who am I? And I have to relearn who I am and everything like that. So it must have happened in that. But I did. So the thing is like I read about horror movies as much as I watch horror movies. And I like to go on all the sites and everything. And I've read a lot about Hereditary. And for whatever reason, it never clicked on it. I know it also has something to do with my wife just not being interested in that. And so she's interested in horror, but like, you know, you show her a trailer, she's like, I don't want to do that. Because we usually watch movies together. And she's a good sport. Like, she watched The Substance with me the other night. But I know how important this movie is. It's a mystery to me why I didn't go back and watch it. But anyway, I did. I watched it. And brother,
it's fucked up, right?
Man, it is fucked up.
This movie is fucked up.
It is fucked up, man. I think I watched it right after we did our last podcast, and it was late, and I went back and I watched it alone. Sometimes it really depends on like where you are when you watch a movie, but the movie settles you into a family drama, right? It has that ordinary people kind of vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So usually when I watch horror movies, there's always a level of separation. There's always something separating me where I can really enjoy it. This movie, there's something about it that kind of settles you into this family drama, and it gets too close. It's not. It's too intimate.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you think about it, the movie wasn't really a violent horror movie, but it
has
feels
a few shocking moments, but it's not gory. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a few shocking moments, but it's vicious.
Yeah.
And it's vicious in the family dynamic, in the emotion, and how bad they hurt each other and how they cut deep in only the way that families can do. Of course, you know, this is dealing with family trauma and generational trauma.
A lot of that is powered by Toni Collette's powerhouse performance in this. Can we all just agree now that she's one of our best actors? Because I think Toni Collette is amazing.
She's amazing. And this movie, because I think this was his first big movie. This might have been his first movie.
It was his first big movie, yeah.
So
he had done some short films before this, but nothing feature length.
Getting Toni Collette for this is a big get.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody that could have done it better than her.
No, you watch the movie and she's mesmerizing in every scene. Yeah.
She's mesmerizing, and she does something that's really tricky because there's moments where she really has to go big.
Yes.
And if somebody is not still grounded when they go big, it can put you off. It can kind of put you into this. It can become a bit cartoonish.
And if you hold anything back, if it's clear to the viewer that you're not confident in your acting powers and so you're just holding a little bit back to not go as big as you need to go, that's so visible. That's so visible to an audience, that lack of confidence. So when an actor can go as big as she does in this with no restraint, with nothing held back, that is such a statement of confidence.
And fully committed. And really smart choices. Yeah. You know, the I never wanted to be your mother like this, you know, and believe it, you know, that's her. You know, I mean, I doubt that was in the page. I haven't read the script, but like, you know, that's a choice that she made in the moment. That was really powerful, really interesting. So I want to say I really liked the movie, but I don't know if like is the right word.
It's not a movie that you necessarily. So I really like the movie. It's not a movie that you enjoy in the way that we think of enjoying.
Yeah.
It's, you know what, there are certain movies that I watch them and I have enormous respect for them, and I really admire the craft and the storytelling and all of that stuff. And afterwards I'm like, I don't need to watch that a bunch of times. Yeah. Like that was a gut punch, and I don't need to, like, another one like that is Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream. You know, you see that one time, you're like, I don't ever need to see that again. It was brilliant. It was beautifully done. It's an amazing film. But I that punched me in the stomach so hard, I don't need to get punched by that movie again.
That's exactly what this was like. It was like it was over, and I was like, this is going to take a minute to kind of process, and I'm not going to be right from that. And it's rare that a movie has power like that. It is a powerful movie. And I think that's a way to, if I was telling somebody about it, I would say, I don't know if I could say I like it, but I was deeply impressed by it, and I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah,
and it was highly effective in what it went out to do. And one of the things too, since I've heard about this movie, read this movie a lot, is one of the things that I heard was like it was hard to understand. And
really?
I don't get that. I thought it was very clear.
It's not a movie that holds your hand.
Yeah,
it's not a movie that explains itself. If you're paying attention,
but it does lay it all out.
It does. No, that's what I'm saying.
Clear.
If you pay attention, it lays everything out for you.
Yeah.
It just never holds your hand and goes, oh, did you notice the spot point over here? That's important. Right. It just kind of gives you the stuff and expects you to draw the connections as it's going. There is a segment of the American audience, especially the home viewing audience, because people can't put their fucking phones down. And so I consistently see this. People like, oh, that show was confusing, or that movie was confusing. I'm like, were you staring at your phone the entire time? And so you missed everything that was happening on screen. Well, yeah, I mean, I was talking to my friend Fred. I think the I'm always on my phone audience is probably going to struggle to understand some of the Hereditary plot points because they're kind of subtle. But if you're paying attention, which I know that you were, because when you watch a movie, you're fully in. That's how I am too.
Particularly a movie like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, everything worked on me. I was not ahead of the movie at all. And when the sequence with the girl, totally, I never read anything about it. There was no spoilers. It was from each moment. I was like, what? I was spellbound. But go ahead and set us up. I don't think we've set up the movie yet.
I think you talking about everything working on you is a great segue, because I didn't watch anything about it either. I didn't read any reviews. I read a few things where people go, oh, this is a great movie, but not any reviews that broke down plot or anything. So I will watch trailers, but I only watch about 15 seconds of them. Because my feeling is within that first 15 seconds, I can tell, is this professionally shot? Does it look good? The actors, the performances seem good. And if you only watch the first 15 or 20 seconds, you don't get any spoilers, right? And that's usually what I do. So I had probably done that, watched like a 15 or 20 second chunk of the first trailer, and then been like, no, this looks good. This looks very professional. I want to see this.
You can also see, particularly in horror movies, what that horror movie is going to rely on. Is this going to be a jump scare horror movie, or is this going to be a character-driven horror movie where the horror comes from the relationships and the story and the context of the story? Right. Which this is not a jump scare horror movie.
Although there are a few startling moments. It's not a jump scare movie. So jump scares are cheap. Jump scares are like, suddenly thrusting something into frame and making a loud noise, right? Which humans can't help but have some kind of reaction to that. Yeah. That's just how our nervous systems work. Right. Well, they're cheap. They're easy. It's, it's like coming up behind somebody who doesn't know you're there and clapping in their ear. They're going to jump. It's not because you're clever. It's because humans just do that, right? Yeah. The thing that is harder to do, that this movie does on multiple occasions, is have the effect of a jump scare without the sudden movement and loud noise where you're startled by realizing something. There's a couple moments in that movie where I'm watching and I'm like, I realize something that has been on screen the entire time, that there's no jump out thing. But I go, oh my God. And then like you have that startle moment of like, Jesus Christ, was she up in that corner the whole time?
Right? Oh God. Yeah, so, you're exactly right.
But those startle moments are much harder to do. Yeah. And it requires a higher level of craftsmanship and artistry to do that. And this, and it was those moments I went, this director's somebody to watch.
Yes.
This guy's got some fucking chops, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say that because I watched the movie like 8 years too late. But but now I'm like, this.
Yeah.
This Ari Aster
now that we're
guy,
4 movies in on this guy, this guy's probably pretty good.
He's going somewhere. Yeah. And I like how I love, and I know I said this before, but I love how we do podcast. Usually there's people that do podcasts right when a movie comes out because it's, to really introduce the movie, to talk about the hot new thing, the hot take, everything like that. Or they do podcasts on movies that are nostalgic and they've been around for a while. We like to go in the lukewarm period lately. We've been going to the lukewarm period lately where it's like, yeah, we've seen that movie 3 times and we're tired of it.
Yeah, and it's on HBO right now, motherfucker.
Yeah. Oh, and not only that, we've read 20 articles and seen 8 podcasts on it. So what the fuck new are you going to bring, dipshit?
Exactly. No, but that's what makes us special,
Yeah. Well, set up the movie, please.
Okay. So what we've got here is a as Wes pointed out, a family drama about a couple and their 2 kids. And it's clear that it is a troubled family. You know, there's tensions in the marriage. There's tensions between the kids. But it's the typical. It at first appears to be the typical tensions, right? You know, the kid wants to sneak out to a party that his parents don't want him to go to. That's everybody's done that. Everybody's been there, right? Every kid who's, you know, like, you know, you had a dad who was like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
But most of us had parents who were like, like, no, you can't go to that party. It's a school night or whatever. And, you know, and you go anyway, right?
Yeah.
So there's that kind of thing going on, which is tense, but not unexpected.
Right. And there's a death in the beginning. Her mother's died.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that adds some tension to it. But there's just a little bit of weirdness. There's a few things happen that are just kind of strange. And one of the things that is strange in this movie is daughter. So there's a son who seems very typical and a daughter who seems very not typical. She's, and no offense to the actor, but and they definitely play it up with the makeup and other things.
It's not only no offense, she's convincing in the role.
No,
she's
but what I'm saying is,
in the role.
What I was going to say, no offense to her, she's in the movie, she's strange looking. She's strange looking. She makes strange noises. She doesn't interact with her peers in a way that you expect from a kid that age.
She's dead eyes.
There's just something
dead
strange.
Yeah.
And obsessed with like dead things, like dead, you know, the dead
decapitated
bird.
the bird.
Yeah. So there's just something kind of strange about her. And what the movie is doing is playing on our audience expectation that means whatever's going to happen is going to happen through her, which is very clever because it doesn't. And in one of the most shocking scenes in the movie, that becomes very clear that that's not where the strangeness is going to come from. But the movie does a good job of dropping us into this family, making it seem a lot like a family we know, giving us a little weirdness, and then this girl, where we're like, oh, she's going to be the Damien, she's going to be floating and, you know, like talking like Regan from Exorcist, right? That's like where my brain went. Like, oh, she's going to be the one who gets possessed, and she's going to be the girl from The Exorcist. And then there's a shocking moment where she's taken out of the picture, and we are left reeling. We're left wondering, okay, what the fuck is happening here? What, you know, the weirdness is still happening, but now she's not there anymore. And then the movie just sort of goes off on its own path. Now it's been unfettered by expectation, and once the movie's been unfettered by expectation, it kind of can do whatever it wants, and it does that to good effect.
The opening of the movie, her mother, Toni Collette's mother, dies, and you could get the sense that there's a troubled relationship. The grandson doesn't really even care. He goes, "Are you okay? Do you have any feelings?" He's like, I don't know. And so you realize like there's distance. There's a lot of history between them, and that is kind of the tension in the beginning. Her mother dies. There's a lot of problematic stuff that is revolving around that, and as that starts to unwind, and this everything between the cinematography, the score. The way it is just filling the atmosphere with tension, and it does. It's. I don't think since The Shining have I seen a movie that fills me with this such dread just in the atmosphere. And I think
unexplained dread. You don't even understand where the dread is coming from, but it's there.
And then something is unexplained, but even in the performances, something just seems like anything can happen at any time.
Yeah.
And I think the first like hint of a supernatural thing is when she's in her mother's room and she turns off the light and her mother is like there.
Yeah.
You know, and then she turns it back on and it's not there. And it's one of those things where you're talking about, they don't telegraph it. It's not a jump scare. It's very subtle. She's just standing in the side of the room and then she turns it off. And then you're like, I didn't like that. And I don't like the way that I feel right now. And everything starts unraveling from there when you start to learn more about the relationship between her and her mother.
Yes. All of that is true. Then, in one of the early shocking twists, one of the ones that everybody talks about, but is, I think, not the most shocking moment in the movie, but it should be. In any other movie, it would be the most shocking moment. In this one, it's not. The kid sneaks out to a party. His sister comes along with him, his little sister.
No. He doesn't sneak out. That's very important.
Okay.
He doesn't sneak out. So the kid gets established kind of, he's like a stoner. He's kind of living in a dream kind of state. He's dealing with a lot of stuff with him and his mom. He tells his mom that he's going to this party.
Right.
And the mom says, take the sister with you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was using sneak out to a party as like whenever a teenager goes to a party, for some reason I always like.
Yeah, you always think
say
sneak
that.
out.
Yeah,
but it's interesting because of the explosive dinner scene where they get in an argument. It's a pivotal moment, and so he's like, "Mom, and by the way, like, you go to a high school, like you're gonna take in the way that they set this girl up. You're not taking that girl to it's not gonna go well at a high school party. The way that she acts, her vibe, or what, he's trying to impress this girl. He's trying to, and she's like, "Hey, take your sister." And I'm like, why is she making him take his sister, who's in elementary school, to a high school party?
Right.
Because they're not going to be nice to her. It's going to be a hard thing for her.
Yeah. Why would you put her through that?
Yeah. Why would you put her through that? Because any elementary school kid that shows up at a high school party where they're having a good time, they're not nice. High school kids aren't nice. They're not going to be nice to her.
No.
So she forces him to take, which I thought was a little bit like, how is that going to work? Like, what is this high school? And then when they walk in, it is so awkward. You feel the tension in the room, and he's got a crush on this girl, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go smoke some weed with this girl. You hang out, eat some chocolate cake."
Well, and they've established one of the things about this girl that they established early on is that she has a very bad allergy to nuts, which is a very common allergy. So it doesn't feel that weird that she has that, but it's important in this moment because she's at this party. Her brother's not paying attention to her. She's eating all this food at the party, the cake that you're talking about, that we know has nuts in it, and is struggling to breathe,
right?
Which is very important. Mm-hmm. So on the drive back, he's trying to get her home. She doesn't have her EpiPen. And if you've ever had friends who have really powerful allergies, this is a real thing. This is a thing where, like, I have friends who have to carry an EpiPen with them everywhere they go because, you accidentally brush against some peanut butter and suddenly you can't breathe. You got to jab that thing in or you're just going to fucking die. This moment happens to this girl. She's having that. She can't breathe. She's wheezing. He's like rushing her home to try to get the EpiPen so that she doesn't die.
Right.
And then you have this shocking moment. In order to breathe, she sticks her head out the window of the car just to get more air. And he goes too close to a telephone pole and she is hit by the telephone pole and instantly killed.
It shocked the hell out of me because you're right.
It's shocking.
Because they started telling the movie like they were centering the movie around her.
Yes.
And then she's in the car. She went to breathe. Wow. And her head comes rolling off. And I was like, Jesus. I actually paused the thing. I was like, Jesus Christ. And I went, that whole sequence is excellent. Everything coming up to that. And then he stops the car and he's breathing. And the camera is his point of view looking up in the rearview mirror. And it slowly goes over. And her headless body is sitting in the back of the seat. And he looks back. And then he just look there again. He's like, and he's talking to her. He knows she's dead. He knows he's decapitated, but he can't accept that. Yeah. And he's like, you're going to be okay. We're going to get you to, he's like, and you're like, oh my God. Then he drives home.
Yeah.
Parks the car. This is gut wrenching. Goes inside and goes to bed.
Yes. I actually found that to be one of the most interesting and unexpected and realistic choices in the movie. That he has suffered a emotional shock so powerful, he literally cannot process it. He can't process it. His brain is just shutting down. His body's just shutting down. It's just like all he can do is climb into the bed and pull the covers up over his head.
Yeah.
That's all he can do.
Right.
I found that unexpected, but so believable.
Before that, Toni Collette goes to this grieving meeting, for the loss of her mother. And she's in there, and then she just they get her to talk, and then she just dumps her life out on the table. And she's like, well, I had a brother who was a schizophrenic, and he said that his mother was trying to put people in his head, so then he killed himself. And then, and just on and on, you're like, Jesus Christ. And so now when he pulls up and parks, and then you hear, the camera's on the kid's face, and you hear her getting up and it's like, hey, I'm going to go to the market. And she's walking through the car, and you're like, this is not going to go well. She's already had some more. This is and then her reaction.
The blood-curdling scream.
Oh. was horrifying.
Yeah.
That whole sequence is one of the most powerful sequences in any horror movie I've ever seen.
It is. And it does something that all horror movies struggle with. This is a very difficult thing to pull off with horror. So everybody knows what a horror movie is. Everybody has expectations for what happens in a horror movie. And because we've seen so many horror movies, the minute the movie gives you any clue about what's happening, we immediately latch onto it. Go, oh, I know what's going to happen now. And your brain jumps way ahead, right? And it's very difficult. So if you do the thing that the person expects, that's a little disappointing because it's like, oh, that's what I knew was going to happen. But if you do something totally unexpected, it's very hard to get the audience to come with you. Because like, oh, I thought this movie was going to be this kind of movie, and you're doing this other thing. They then don't understand. Then they're confused, emotionally confused. It's very hard to say, to build expectations about what your movie is, totally subvert those expectations and drag the audience with you and have the audience have a good surprise rather than a bad surprise. It's so hard to do that. That's real artistry in that. The other movie that did that so well is Barbarian. You've seen Barbarian, right?
Yeah.
Where we're watching the first 20 minutes of that movie. We think it's a movie about a dude who's going to assault a woman, right?
Yeah.
That's what we think the movie is. And everything the movie is doing is cueing us in on that. Our brains are already, oh, he's going to stay there and he's going to assault her and she's going to, And then there's such a shocking moment when that doesn't happen, but it's done in a way that it pulls us in. And we're like, oh my, holy fuck, now I need to see what the rest of what happens, right?
Right.
And that's what Hereditary does is it sets up this girl is going to be the issue. Like you said, the movie feels like it's centering on her. Then this shocking moment where clearly the movie is not centering on her anymore, but it's so shocking and the reactions are so realistic and the weirdness of the whole thing pulls us in rather than pushing us away. Right? We're all in now. And that is one of the hardest things to do with horror movies. It's one of the hardest tricks to pull off. And the minute that happened in this movie, I was like, oh, okay, I'm in. For whatever's happening for the rest of this, I need to see the rest of it.
Yeah. When they're going to the party, they do focus in on that telephone pole and that sign, that sign. So, and you've seen that sign before. Yeah. They've seen it enough, but they don't really pay attention. And then the first time you focus on that sign when they're going through, then you know what the fuck's going on and where did that ram come from? That's in the middle of the road. And what really scares me, and we've talked about this before, is when you have a realization of something that's happened, that's going on, you're already trapped. You're already fucked. And there's like this parasite relationship of this cult to this bloodline, to this family. And they're so involved because the fucking mother, like, intertwine this cult and payment into these people's lives, into their family, that even once they start unraveling all this stuff, that it's too late. There's no hope. There's no hope in this movie. It's brutal.
Well, let's talk about that because once the girl has been killed in this horrific accident, the mother starts doing investigation into her mother. So the Toni Collette character starts digging in, and we come to realize, as Toni Collette comes to realize, her mother was involved in something very dark. You know, the worship of this demon with this cult, and invited it into their lives. That the demon wants to inhabit someone, that the family has been trying to have a child that the demon can then inhabit. And
what was this is coming up? Remind me, what was the first moment where that was fully revealed? The cult
fully revealed. There were lots of hints about it.
There were lots because
Toni Collette going through her mother's stuff was there was clues. There was like books and stuff
because there which I thought was really great. I know that Toni Collette went through her daughter's drawings. It was all like decapitation and like headless people and stuff, and that really. But there was something that brought her to her mother's stuff, but she didn't get to the photo album yet. So there was something that tipped it off. You know what? I think at this point, I think that there was a lot of her knowing that her mother was something was up to something that was unholy. I think she even knew on a subconscious level. That's why, number one, she didn't want to have children. Yeah. She knew that because her mother ultimately wanted her to be a man, because Payman needs to occupy a man's body.
And her brother, who was the original victim for Payman, killed himself.
Right.
So Payman lost his first host.
when she was pregnant, she tried to terminate the pregnancy. She ended up having the son, and then one night she sleptwalk and doused him in, I don't think it was gasoline, but it was something that's flammable. And
it was like kerosene or something. Yeah.
And he woke up and caught his mother about to burn him alive.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying shit, right? And, and by the way,
my parents used to do that to me all the time.
Well, you were in a cult. Was it a payment cult?
I assume. Yeah.
Oh, see, I told you. I knew you already made that deal. But so she starts to really have a strong sense that something's not wrong. But by the way, how about putting a lock on that door? Huh? If my mom tried to burn me alive,
yeah.
Every time she goes to visit him at night, the door's wide open, and he always wakes up and she's standing over his bed. And it's, at some point I'm locking that fucking door.
That's a little unrealistic. No teenage boy has ever slept with their door open.
No.
Because there's some shit going on in there that the rest of the house doesn't need to see.
There's shit going down. Yeah, there's some socks underneath the bed, I'll tell you. But anyway, she starts to figure this thing out. But she meets this lady at her grief club.
Yeah.
And it's played by Ann Dowd, who's excellent.
Yeah.
And
has always been excellent.
And she's always been excellent. And every time you see her, you're like, oh yeah. And you're, I like when I think the first time not the first time I saw her, but I remember seeing her in Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
She's so good in Handmaid's Tale. But then, and then I saw her in this. She comes in like a supportive friend, brings her, is going to help her out with the grief. And what does she decide to do? She tells her about a seance.
Yeah.
When have you seen seances go right?
Never. Not one time. Any movie that has a seance in it, some fucked up stuff is going to happen at that seance. The only time seances go right is when
in Ghost with Whoopi
Goldberg. I was going to say is when it's not it doesn't work and there's a skeptic there who points out that it's all bullshit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. Swayze and Ghost that ended up working out okay. She ends up having a seance. Ann Dowd makes up the story about her grandson. That they're seeing the grandson, so she teaches how to do the seance, and then she brings it to her family, and then she has them all gather around and do the family to talk to their dead daughter.
Which, by the way, super fucked up.
Super fucked up.
Yeah.
And
why do you think that's a good idea?
And where's come on, Gabriel Byrne, shut that shit down, right? And I will say, that role was a little bit of a waste of Gabriel Byrne. I think
they don't give him a ton to do.
Yeah.
But Gabriel Byrne, just by being Gabriel Byrne, adds a weight and a gravitas to a part just because, if it hadn't been Gabriel Byrne, that character would have disappeared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it could have been more active. I think it could have. It's the only undeveloped character in the.
But I also think that he's the only victim in this movie. He's the one.
You don't think Peter's a victim?
Well, yeah. But I mean, what happens to Peter eventually? Yes, definitely victimizes him. But Gabriel Byrne is the character. Just wanted a family. He married Toni Collette. He just wanted a family. He just wanted a normal life. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
And you think all this shit that he has nothing to do with. Is getting dumped on him.
Do you think Toni Collette gave him that grief speech on their first date? Where she kind of laid out her family history.
And he was like, that is so hot. Yeah, that is so hot.
Yeah, he must be in that. She's into that sort of thing, Dino.
She's sitting there going, and then my brother killed himself. Are you masturbating right now? No.
Yeah, he's just a glutton for it because it was very hard to kind of get a beat on him. Yeah. It was I think that he could have been more active. So this all climaxes at the horrifying dinner, which I think is the most disturbing scene in the whole movie is the speech. Because by the way, this happened with this, he's driving and he decapitates his sister. And did you think there would be, and I think it's smart that they cut it out, but it is interesting to me because he was high. How did they avoid the police of it all?
They don't really get into that.
I mean, maybe he slept and it got out of his system. Maybe they didn't do it just feels like there would have been a drug test, you know?
Or that's another sign that the events are being controlled by this otherworldly force, right?
Because one thing that's interesting, and I was trying to, and I'm probably jumping ahead, but I didn't mean to jump ahead, is that's when you say the other force, one thing that is interesting is that when the reveal of the cult, you realize that you've seen them throughout the whole movie.
Yes.
You've seen them, like, he was smoking weed when the guy, you know, there was the one of the guys you see it in the school, like, and it's not like the camera drawing any attention to him. They'd just be in the background.
Right. They were just there.
And the one weird guy with the smiling face, like I saw him a couple times in there. So he plants these, these things. I love that it has a little bit of a John Carpenter Halloween feel where Mike Myers would just kind of be off to the side. And if you saw it, it's scary as fuck. But if you missed it, you missed it. You know?
Yeah. He doesn't draw attention to it. There's no loud like jump scare noise. It's just,
By the way, there is a Halloween homage shot in the schoolroom, in the classroom. It's clear to me that it's a Halloween homage shot in the classroom.
Is it the one where he looks out the window? Is that what you're talking about?
It's when they first go in and the teacher's teaching and she's talking about fate or whatever, and then it kind of goes in, and then that one. And yeah, he does look out the window, right? Yeah.
Well, but on your comments about Gabriel Byrne, I did want to say I think part of what makes that job that character a little thankless, and what you're talking about him feeling underdeveloped, is what he's supposed to be playing is he's lost. He doesn't understand what's happening here. He's the guy who has no context for anything. And there's a lot of unprecedented shit happening. His daughter just died. She was killed in this horrific accident. He doesn't understand what's happening to his son. His wife is getting weirder and weirder, and he doesn't understand that. He's just kind of a victim. He's just kind of lost, right? And it's hard to play a guy who's lost without it feeling a little flat, because there's not a lot to do with that, right?
But he could have been given strong choices, because even when you're lost, you try things. You get angry. You get you say, okay, you say, we're going to therapy. There's things that you can do, active choices when they're in there. The most interesting moment they had is when they had a blowout at the dinner table, and that blowout at the dinner table, where she was so resentful and despite, and so, I don't want to say hate, but because I think she loves her son, but she also hates her son because he was involved in this situation, and she unloads on him, and she's like, I hate it that you feel this guilt and this shame for what you did. And what she's saying is like, you should feel guilt and shame for what you did. So she's kind of punishing, but she's barely holding herself back, trying to hold these punches. And he's like, what about you, Mom? Why was she even at that party? And you see the horror in her face, because underneath it all, she knows she made him bring her to that party, and that girl did not belong at that party.
Yeah.
And it was they cut so deep in that thing. And when they stormed out, Gabriel Byrne knew, like, that's a conversation you don't come back from. You might can reconcile, but that pain, that hurt is always going to be there. And watching it, it's one of the hardest things to watch in a movie that everything is hard to watch. But Gabriel Byrne took his hand and he put it on his son's hand and he squeezed. And so that was the most interesting moment, the most interesting thing that he had to do, because it shows that he loves his son and that he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, and the sense I got from his character, and you're right, they don't give him a ton to do in this. They don't.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But the sense I got from him is a guy who's trying to hold his family together and doesn't see that it's already dead. Gabriel Byrne reminds me of the guy who's doing chest compressions on somebody who died 10 minutes ago, right? He's so desperate to believe that it is possible to fix, that it's possible to come out the other side of this and still have his wife and still have his son and still have some semblance of the family that he wanted. And he's so wrong, and he doesn't know that. And to me, he's the most tragic character, because he just really wants to believe that it's possible to survive this. And it's like, dude, you died. You're already dead. There's no way. There's no coming back from this.
See, I didn't see it that way. I didn't see what I felt and what I experienced with the Gabriel Byrne character is he's somebody that is paralyzed by how far doomed his family is. and he doesn't know what to do.
I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but I think that paralysis is part of what I'm saying. When something horrific happens and you know what to do, you're not paralyzed. You do something, right? You're only paralyzed when you don't know what to do. And the only reason he doesn't know what to do, so like if something happens and you fucking know your family is over, you're not paralyzed anymore, right? The thing that paralyzes him is his need to believe that it is possible to save them.
But I don't think he thinks it's possible. I think
his actions to me indicate that he does think there's some way out of this.
He is passive in his actions. I think he sees his family unraveling and destroying themselves, and all he can do is watch it. He says like a few things like, don't go there. Let's don't do the seance. Let's don't do that. But it's a passive argument. It's a passive thing that he does. But to your point, it is tragic in that way. But I see somebody that doesn't have hope, particularly after the girl dies. I see that there is what you're saying, I wish it was like that. I think that is more interesting. That is more active, where he does have hope, where he is trying to hold it together, where he's being proactive. But if you see him, even at dinner, it's almost like he doesn't know what to do, so he sits there and eats his dinner. He goes back to his dinner. In every step of the way, he knows that the seance is a bad idea. He knows that when she's doing certain things, but he can't stop her, and he doesn't really try to stop her.
Well, but that's, to me, that's another clue. What the other thing that's happening here is, I think you've got a guy, and this reminds me of other couples I've known, that you've got a guy is madly in love with his wife, and she is a much more dominant personality than he is. I think all their married lives, the Toni Collette character has been the big personality, the one that is like forceful and powerful, and I think he's impressed by that. I think he admires her for that, and I think he just has been swept up in the wake of her his whole life. And now that she's coming apart, the thing that sort of pulled them through their whole lives is coming apart. He's baffled by that, but he needs to believe he can keep her, right?
Yeah.
I think if he had to admit that they were not going to stay together, I think that would destroy him. So he can't admit it. Right?
Yeah, I think he's in denial of it, but I also think he's paralyzed by it. And
I think the paralysis comes from that denial.
Yeah, and I think exactly. So there's a passiveness, and I think you're right in what you said about their history and how they came together. But I also think that, and she has this in her speech, she said, I never felt like my life was my own. I never felt like I made my own choices, because her mother was manipulating her whole life, her whole identity, and it was all to another end. She was never, and so I think a part of her building these models and these is a control thing. And even when her daughter gets hit by the telephone pole, and that's the ultimate loss of control. So what does? She builds a model of the death, because she's trying to get her hands into it and try to control it and try to understand it, because she has this small macro reality that she creates with her hands, and that gives her the only sense of control, because her life, what she subconsciously knows, is being manipulated and manufactured to serve something that she doesn't want any part of. And that's why she didn't let her son get anywhere near her mother. That's why at some point she tried to kill her son a couple of times. And that's why with her daughter, she was manipulated and let her in the daughter. But I think even on a subconscious level, that Payman needs a male figure. So she feels like that this is safe.
They certainly imply that Toni Collette at least subconsciously knew what was going on.
Yeah,
even though she didn't allow herself to consciously understand.
Yeah, and I think there's a similarity between Toni Collette and the Nosferatu Lily Rose Depp character, because she sleepwalks a lot. So there's something within this bloodline, and I think it was implied why is the mother the grand priestess of this cult? And I think that there's something special with their bloodline where they're kind of in the shadow world, because I think it was very clear that Payman needs to exist within this bloodline. It needs a male heir to exist in. So with her sleepwalking and everything, so I think she has that sense that her mother has. So she kind of understands what's going on. And so it's her, she's tortured by it. And so she's rebelling against it. And that's why she's so unhappy and so in such despair.
And she's also, you talk about Paimon needs a male heir, but it's clear that Paimon can, for some amount of time.
By the way, misogyny, Paimon.
Yeah, come on, Paimon.
Come on, Paimon. What, the girl's not good enough for you? You got to decapitate her?
I mean, clearly Paimon can influence or inhabit other people for some amount of time, because one of the things that leads to some of the creepiest moments in the latter third of this movie is that Toni Collette is falling under Paimon. Mm-hmm. That Toni Collette is being influenced or inhabited by that demon, because you have some shit that happens. A non-possessed person can't do that shit. When she's Spider-Maning up the ceiling,
oh yeah, I mean,
so yes, Paimon wants the boy, but he can jump into Toni Collette if he needs to and make her do some shit. Yeah,
that's interesting, because why wouldn't he just jump in the boy? Because I thought for a second, until you brought up Toni Collette, I thought they had to be decapitated for him to be free and then move into somebody else, and I thought that's why Toni Collette cuts her own head off. By the way, I don't want to jump ahead. I know that's a great reveal. And you might want to bring us up to the point we are now, just kind of like the behind the scenes. If somebody's watching Hereditary and they thought it was hard to understand, it's basically the mother is. Do you think she was the founder of this cult, or just like the highest ranking member of this cult?
I don't know. I mean, obviously. I mean, they certainly.
She's very important. The mother's very important.
That Paimon worship is very old,
right?
So it may just be, she may just be the most important member of the current iteration of that cult, but they certainly imply that cult goes back into antiquity, right?
And something significant happened with this seance, right? So because Anne Dowd's character showed her how to do this seance, she brings it home. She does this seance with her family. Obviously, they're inviting Paimon in. Is this when she first gets infected by Paimon?
I think that's a perfectly valid reading of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That the reason that the Andad character wants her to do this is because she knows it'll allow Paimon access to her in a way that she didn't before. Yeah.
Right.
I'd never articulated that before, but I think that's a really good explanation for what's happening.
So maybe they had to have some kind of ceremony or something for Paimon to enter her. And at this point, this is where, what motivates her to go through all her mother's albums and everything?
The feeling I get watching it is that she just needs to understand. Her relationship with her mother was fucked up. She doesn't understand it, and I think she's trying to understand it.
So she goes to the albums, and then she sees Anne Dowd's character, who taught her the seance, and realizes that her and her mother knew each other all along. Yeah. So then she goes to her husband, and she's like, this is happening. This is, these guys, my mom was a part of a cult. This is the situation. They wanted to, infect me. They wanted to infect my son or whatever. And he doesn't believe it. He's like, we can't, you got to stop with this shit. You got to stop it. And then when she explains it to me, you go, it's not true. It's not true. And this poor bastard, she's like, look, and she throws the thing in the fire, and then he catches on fire.
Yeah.
Sweet trick, Paimon.
Yeah.
And then he bursts up in flames.
By the way, another reversal, another shocking reversal that you don't see that coming, but when it happens, you're like, Jesus Christ, right? But maybe I'm sympathetic to the Gabriel Byrne character, because I would have that problem if Janae came to me and was like, I'm being taken over by a demon and there's like spirit things happening. I'd be like, honey, let's take you to a psychiatrist. Let's, you've had some grief. Let's take you to a grief counselor. Demons aren't real. I'd be Gabriel Byrne. I'd be doing the same thing he's doing. I'd be like, no, that can't be right.
And then fucking poor Peter, who decapitated his sister, walks out in the living room. His dad's smoking and charred. He goes up in the attic, and there's naked old people staring at him. And then he looks up and sees his mother floating in the sky in the attic and sawing her head off with piano wire.
Yeah.
That was the most chilling shot.
That was really, really chilling and effectively done. I think the moment that gave me the most horror movie scare, though, is when we're in Peter's room and we realize that his mother has been up in the corner of the room for several minutes, and we just didn't realize she was there because it's dark. but then there's just a tiny bit of movement draws your eye over there. And it's one of those moments you're like, Jesus Christ.
You're right. That was probably the biggest. Yeah, that's scary.
I think you're right that where she's sawing her own head off is very chilling.
Because she's staring right at him.
She's staring at him like,
you're like,
yeah.
Ah!
Yeah.
And then he jumps out of the window, and then now does he die, or does he just knock himself out and then he comes to? When
it feels like he just knocked himself out and then came to me.
All right. So I guess once she saws that head off, then Payman can now enter him.
Right.
And then he goes up in the treehouse, which was interesting because the little girl, the mother, they were always drawn to that treehouse.
Yeah.
And they basically have a statue to Payman, and Payman is now in him.
The treehouse of the devil, man.
Treehouse of the devil, and you got this low rent cult. And then you realize all along that basically the mother was a high ranking member, if not the founder of this cult. She was Payman's bride. And she knows that Payman is connected to her bloodline. She was trying to create, she had a son. She was trying to put Payman in the son. The son was like, I'm not doing it. He killed himself. Don't blame him. And then, she was going to go through her bloodline. And Peter she was not allowed access to Peter. So she ended up putting Payman, a little holder. She put Payman in the little girl and was like, you just wait here. Okay, just wait here. Yeah. I'll get it all sorted out. And then set up Peter. And they had to go through this horrifying shit. And I just felt like there could have been an easier way. Right? Like, why did everybody have to suffer so much?
Because it's a demon.
It is a demon.
Suffering is part of the thing.
Demons are mean, man. Thank you guys for hanging out. We love you. And we'll try to do better next time. We apologize. Please like and subscribe and ring the bell out of pity. And say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Payman.